The unfinished The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep 1952 was completed and re-released in 1980 as The King and the Mockingbird. It is interesting that The King and the Mockingbird 1980 was re-released the year after The Castle of Cagliostro 1979 was released. That means this film was released in 1979 and only a year after The King and the Mockingbird was released. So this film was released in 1979 and The King and the Mockingbird was released a year after. So I'm thinking like, is there a connection between the release dates like of these films? Like, obviously, this film was influenced by the French film The King and the Mockingbird, or the Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep. Just to give a bit of context, The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep was made in 1952, and it was not finished, right? And it was completed and re-released in 1980. And this film, The Castle of Cagliostro 1979, it was influenced heavily by that film. And this film was released in 1979. So this was released in 1979, and The King and the Mockingbird, the completed film, was released in 1980. So I'm just thinking like, how can that be released like only 1 year after this film was released? So was there like some kind of connection between these films? Like the release dates, like how they're just like 1 year apart. Like, was there some kind of connection? Because this film was influenced by The King and the Mockingbird and Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep, which is the same film. And that was made by, the French animation directors. And that had, the 1952 film, which was completed and released in 1980, that had a heavy influence on this film. So, like, why was that released in 1980 and this was released in 1979? Like, is there some kind of connection? So, it's something I'm thinking about. I haven't seen anything online about that, but I'm just wondering, is there a connection with the dates? This film was released in 1979 and The King and the Mockingbird, it was released in 1980. So I'm just trying to think, is there some kind of connection? And like in the inverse, did Miyazaki and others who did the Cagliostro film, did they know that, The King and the Mockingbird was being produced and was about to be released, and they released their film in 1979? Did something like that happen? Or was there some kind of connection, or is it just purely coincidental? So it's like a question that I have. So this film, The King and the Mockingbird, which was the finalization of The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep, the 1952 film, which is never completed, and it was re-released as The King and the Mockingbird in 1980. So this film, which is just one film, which is the same film, had a formative influence on Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata. Miyazaki and Takahata, they founded Studio Ghibli after the success of their film Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. I believe that was in 1984, if I'm not mistaken. And after that film, they had enough funds to start Studio Ghibli, and Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata started that studio together with Toshio Suzuki. So there were three founders of Studio Ghibli, and that was after the Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. So this film, this French film, The King and the Mockingbird, had a formative influence on Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata. Miyazaki has stated that, so he has given this statement, we were formed by the films and filmmakers of the 1950s. At that time, I started watching a lot of films. One filmmaker who really influenced me was the French animator Paul Grimault. It was through watching Le Roi et l'Oiseau, The King and the Mockingbird, by Paul Grimault, that I understood how it was necessary to use space in a vertical manner. My admiration towards Paul Grimault and Le Roi et l'Oiseau had always been the same. So basically, King and the Mockingbird, that's the French name, had always been the same, probably because he achieved better than anyone else a union between literature and animation. So so that's the statement that he has made in relation to The King and the Mockingbird. And the DVD of The King and the Mockingbird, titled O Totori, so that's the Japanese title, O Totori, with Japanese subtitles, went on sale on the Ghibli Museum Library on the 4th of April 2007. That was after the theatrical release in Japan of that film, and the theatrical release in Japan was on the 29th of July 2006. I did find some DVDs online, and there are some images, including some screen captures of the Ghibli Museum, and they have actually even created a website for this film. And those will be available in this video, so you can have a look at that as well. And yeah, so check out The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep 1952. Initially made in 1952, it was never completed, and it was re-released as The King and the Mockingbird in 1980. So just have a look at that, and Paul Grimaud is the creator or the director of that film. These animated films were mentioned in this video: The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep, 1952, re-released as The King and the Mockingbird in 1980. These anime films were mentioned in this video: Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, 1984.